This isn't just a scandal anymore. It's a blueprint for how the world is actually run. For years, we were told the Jeffrey Epstein story was about a lone predator with a few wealthy friends, but the release of over 3 million pages of records has unmasked something far more chilling. We're talking about a construct, a man who didn't just have connections, but who seemingly operated as a shadow governor over the US government, the British royals, and the Kremlin. When the Department of Justice finally dumped these files, they claimed the heavy redactions were there to protect the victims. But then, a few investigators spent 2 hours in a room and realized the DOJ was lying. They weren't protecting victims, they were hiding 6 of the most powerful men on the planet. And once those names were unredacted, the entire narrative shifted from a private vice to a global intelligence operation that is still active today. The discovery began with a glaring mistake by the Justice Department. Representatives Thomas Massie and Ro Khanna went into a secure room to read what the public wasn't allowed to see, and what they found was a deliberate cover-up. They identified 6 names that had been blacked out for no apparent reason other than their status. These weren't just random socialites. We're talking about billionaires like Les Wexner and global power players like Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the CEO of Dubai Ports World. The DOJ admitted the error, but the damage was done. If 2 congressmen could find 6 hidden giants in just 2 hours, it raises a terrifying question. How many hundreds of co-conspirators are buried in the remaining 180,000 images and 2,000 videos that the public still hasn't seen? The files suggest that Epstein's reach wasn't just wide, it was absolute. One of the most disturbing revelations involves Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem. This wasn't a casual acquaintance. Epstein referred to him in emails as his most trusted friend in every sense of the word. The correspondence between them reads like a coded thriller. In one exchange from 2013, the Sultan tells Epstein he's off to sample a fresh 100% female Russian on his yacht. Epstein's response wasn't shock, but a bizarre clinical inquiry into the woman's biology, using language so graphic it suggests a complete detachment from human empathy. This wasn't just guy talk. These messages discuss business dealings, meetings with world leaders, and references to a tour video that the Sultan allegedly loved. The Sultan eventually lost his roles as chairman and CEO after being mentioned thousands of times in these files, but his connection to Epstein reveals how the disgraced financier used logistics and international ports as a playground for his operations. But while the Sultan was handling the yachts, Epstein was busy managing the US government in real time. Perhaps the most demonic piece of evidence is the text log between Epstein and congressional delegate Stacey Plaskett. Picture this. It's 2019 and Michael Cohen, Donald Trump's former lawyer, is testifying in a high-stakes congressional hearing. Stacey Plaskett is sitting on the bench questioning him. In the middle of the hearing, her phone buzzes. It's Jeffrey Epstein. He's coaching her. He tells her that Cohen's assistant, Rona Graff, is the keeper of the secrets. Minutes later, Plaskett uses that exact information to grill Cohen on the record. Think about the level of compromise required for a convicted offender to be directing a congressional hearing from his cell phone. Plaskett later claimed she was just getting information from a constituent, but the timestamps don't lie. Epstein wasn't a constituent, he was a handler. This leads us to the Russian net. The unredacted Department of Justice documents mention Russia thousands of times and Vladimir Putin over 1,000 times. Epstein wasn't just looking for talent in Eastern Europe, he was acting as a back-channel facilitator. He repeatedly sought meetings with Putin, claiming he had advice on how the Kremlin should handle Donald Trump. He even used an official with a background in the FSB, Russia's successor to the KGB, to dig up dirt on people who were trying to extort his business partners. This confirms what many have suspected. Epstein was fishing for nerds and power players to build a blackmail empire that spanned from the White House to the Kremlin. He wasn't just a financier, he was an intelligence asset who moved money in ways no economist can explain. Joe Rogan and Eric Weinstein have discussed this construct theory. When Eric Weinstein first met Epstein, he didn't see a genius, he saw a fraud. He described a scene where Epstein was trying to discuss complex mathematics while a young woman sat on his lap, literally bouncing around to distract him. It was nerd fishing. Epstein would lure in the world's most brilliant minds, scientists, tech moguls, and mathematicians with the promise of funding and parties, only to trap them in a web of recorded encounters. Bill Gates is perhaps the biggest catch in this net. The files reveal a 6-year friendship that Gates tried to bury. Epstein's emails even claim he had leverage over Gates about a substance incident or a health complication involving a Russian woman, suggesting he used this to pressure Gates into business deals. Gates's team calls these claims absurd, but Melinda French Gates's subsequent divorce and her comments about Epstein being evil personified suggest the muck was very real. The rot extends across the Atlantic to the UK government. Peter Mandelson, a former EU Trade Commissioner and Labour MP, was caught in the crossfire of the latest leaks. The files don't just show Mandelson in compromising positions, they show him leaking sensitive UK government tax plans to Epstein. He was literally advising a convicted child predator on how to mildly threaten the British Treasury to change policy from within. When you see a high-ranking politician risking his entire career to serve the interests of a man like Epstein, you have to ask what kind of collateral Epstein was holding over his head. Mandelson has since stepped down, but the invitation for Epstein to dine at Buckingham Palace and the photos of Prince Andrew remain as permanent scars on the British establishment. The most chilling part of this entire saga isn't what we found, but what's still being hidden. We now know that the blackmail wasn't just a side effect of Epstein's lifestyle, it was the product. Whether he was working for the CIA, Mossad, or his own shadowy entity, he was a master of laundering influence. He made himself indispensable to men like Les Wexner, who gave him total power of attorney over a multi-billion-dollar empire. He positioned himself so deeply within the infrastructure of global power that even after his death, the Department of Justice is still struggling to keep the lid on the jar. We found 6 men in 2 hours because they let their guard down, but as the pizza codes and the unredacted images continue to leak, it's becoming clear that the demonic labels aren't just hyperbole, they're a description of a system that traded human lives for political leverage. The files are still being decrypted, and the open loops are starting to close. If Epstein was indeed a manufactured construct designed to compromise the world's elite, then his death wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of the cleanup. The question is no longer who was on the plane, but who is still in power because they stayed off the flight logs. Every time a hot mic catches a lawyer telling a billionaire to keep his answers short, we get a glimpse of the fear that still permeates the upper echelons of society. They thought the redactions would save them, but the truth has a way of leaking through the cracks.